Hello everybody, I hope you're going well. Today I will show you a very nice game played by Sergey Karjakin versus Magnus Carlsen. So this game is actually very important because it was their World Championship match in 2016, and this game is actually the first game with a decisive result. So Karjakin is playing with the black pieces, Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces, and the game starts with d4, positional chess. Knight f6, knight f3, d5, e3, e6, so everybody just wants to bring the pieces out. c5, counterattacking the center, b3, preparing bishop b2, bishop e7, castles, castles, bishop b2, b6. I mean, these are just developing moves. There is nothing concrete for the moment. So after b6, c4 is a move, knight d2 is a move, but probably c4 is the best move. Bishop b7, something like that might happen, and we might have, a position that looks like that, and that's a very, very known position, hanging pawns and tralala. And black wants d4, and white wants to attack the c pawn, and it's difficult, but that's known. But actually, white didn't want that. White decided to take on c5 first after b6. Okay, bishop takes. I mean, now the bishop is just great. Knight bd2, bishop b7, and somehow black is just better. There's just much more space for black in the center, and it's basically a good position. Queen e2, eventually preparing bishop a6, so knight bd7. We don't care about bishop b6, a6. I mean, the bishop is bad for the moment. c4, counterattacking the center. And okay, d takes c4, knight takes c4, and the position is just equal. I mean, white didn't get anything out of the opening. Eventually, better placed knights and a very nice bishop, but okay, there is nothing to worry about. Queen e7, preparing to put the rooks in the center. Again, simple chess. a3, a5. Just stopping any b4 possibility. Knight d4. The idea is just to play f4, f5, or f3, 4. So, rook fd8, putting more pressure in the center, rook fd8, just preparing to put pieces in the center, rook ac8, rook ac1, and now the position is basically equal, because the position is basically equal. But if you look at this position, somehow black is slightly more active. But why, would you ask me? The reason is that the pawn on a3 is actually being targeted by the bishop and the queen, which is giving black a small edge. So it's difficult to say that white really gained something out of the opening. Of course, white isn't worse, but position is at least equalized. Knight f8, preparing knight g6 and eventually knight e5, but knight f8 is generally speaking a good move. The knight isn't that bad on f8, it's doing a great defensive job, and it is just opening up the files in the center. Queen e1, strange move, probably preparing b4, but doesn't prepare b4, so this move is just strange. Preparing eventually knight d2, knight f4. But okay, knight g6, improving the position of the knight. Bishop f1. So that was the idea, to play passively. Okay, all the pieces are almost on the first row. Just the knights. I would recommend you knight c2, knight a1, and knight d2, knight b1. Oh no, wait, there is this bishop. So how do we do that? I know. We go this, then this, and bishop a1, and we have it. All the pieces on the first row. So knight g4. Why? Because you're going backwards, I would go forward. And actually the idea is to go knight e5 and trade off the only active knight for black, because this knight is actually attacking the b6 pawn, and Karjakin doesn't want to see that. Knight b5. The idea is to control the e5 square with the bishop. So knight e5 isn't possible anymore. But it's not a problem. This knight isn't protected, so bishop c6. Now if you go back on c3, I will go knight e5, and I will trade off your fabulous knight, and notice that I have perfect pieces. I mean, I'm just having the greatest position that has ever existed. So let's go back. a4 was played after bishop c6. But okay, now bishop d5. Since it is your only active knight, I have to trade it off. This knight on b5 looks great, but it is actually doing nothing. There is no target. And since b4 isn't playable anymore, the bishop on c5 isn't that weak. Bishop d4, trying to trade off this fabulous bishop. Bishop c4, trading off this fabulous knight. I can guarantee you that it is that easy. Rook c4, bishop d4, rook d takes d4, and notice that white wants to be active. But when all your pawns are on the light squares, you prefer to keep your dark square bishop alive. So that is the reason why after takes, and actually knight f6, black is actually preparing to go on the c file and to play queen a3 at some point. But if black wants to attack on the dark squares, we have to do something about the queen guarding the b4 square and the knight guarding the a3 square. So we will see how Magnus Carlsen deal with that. Queen d2 and rook b8. We don't want to trade the rooks off. This rook isn't that active. There is no real target on the d file, so there is no need to trade it off. g3, preparing to play bishop d2. That is a good move. Knight e5, threatening a fork. Okay, of course he saw that. Always try it. Who knows? And h6, making sure that there is no back rank, checkmate, quadruple, discover problems or something like that. And now f4, which is a strange move. Honestly, that is a strange move because I can understand the idea, knight d7, and somehow you will go e4, e5. But if you do that, the knight is actually particularly active on the c5 square. There are quite a lot of targets, and white will have to face some, already a big amount of problems. So knight d7 was played and not e4, but knight a7. The idea is again to threaten a fork in one move, I guess. But the problem is that this knight on b5 was super active, ready to attack, going to go, stopping the queen from going on a3. So black was actually facing some small troubles. But after knight a7, queen a3 is possible, and Karjakin will do that. And you might think, but this is hanging. Yes, it is. But you know who is also hanging? This guy over there. Boom, check. You have to go on f2 because otherwise I can take your pawn on e3, and once you go there, I can get your pawn on c4, then I can potentially get your pawn on a4. I can potentially, it's just that I'm better in that position. That's that simple. I can actually also take on e3. What am I doing? And now that's not a good position, actually. Yeah, that's actually even worse because it is checkmate. So you have to go on f1, but then check this. And now that's actually an easy game for black. Black has 3 pawns. I'm sorry, has 2 pawns and a rook against 2 pieces. And it's not enough for white, because now there is a potential passed a pawn in the future. So knight c6 was played instead of rook takes d7, and now rook f8. Just putting the rook into safety. h3, stopping any knight g4 move. Again, we don't want to take there because there are just too many problems with everything. Yeah, too many problems. That's even worse. So h3, and now knight c5. Preparing knight b3 and queen takes a4. And notice how actually it was super easy for Karjakin to use the weaknesses that Magnus Carlsen created. I think the whole reason why Magnus Carlsen was worse is because of this move bishop d4. I will show you. When Magnus Carlsen played bishop d4, I think he under-evaluated the potential activity that black might have on the dark squares. That's possible. That's not easy, and especially in a world championship match. But okay, knight c5, king h2. Now there is a small trap. If you do that, there is queen c3, and that's not good. But of course, Karjakin saw that, and since there was no way to protect the a4 pawn, Magnus Carlsen had to try this trap. But okay, knight a4, rook d8, g6, just making sure that the king has some free squares. For example, something like that isn't such a problem because there is no problem, and the queen can always come back and protect the king. So queen d4 attacking there, but king g7, everything is protected. And if you take on f8, I take with the queen. If I take with the king, I just lose the knight. So c5, trying to attack there, and now I want to, let's say you play a bad move, I want to take there and take this, because the queen isn't guarding the f8 square anymore, so we cannot take with the queen. It is illegal. So c5, and now rook takes d8. Okay, you have to take it back, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. And now knight c5. And okay, of course, Magnus took with the knight because that way there is, a small pin going on the king's side, so that's still pretty good. But after knight takes c5, black is just up 2 pawns and the position is already lost. And notice that it was actually pretty easy for a player like Karjakin to just use the fact that there is one weak square, the a3 square. And like I always say, it's easy to blunder something tactical, but it's actually even easier to blunder something strategical. And that's the difference between a good chess player and a bad chess player. Karjakin did nothing. He just improved his position slowly, queen e7, rook c8, and that's it. And Magnus Carlsen tried too hard. He didn't try to improve his position, he just tried to win immediately. And that is the best way to not win. Queen d6, preparing some attack, queen e7, checkmate, but queen d3, trading off the queens. If you go queen e7, I have queen d3. So of course, knight takes e6, small tactic. If you take with the knight, I lose the queen. So you have to take with the f pawn, and after queen e7, king g8. Even though you're taking there, I do not care because I have my passed pawns, and that's it. You know, now of course e4. The idea is to stop the queen from the defense with the g6 pawn, but that's not a problem. Of course, queen g7. I just want to trade off the queens. If you go queen g6, again, I can just go on h8 and you have no more checks, and this pawn will fly. Yeah, he would just fly over, and that's it. So queen c6, queen d8, making sure that there is no way for white to stop the pawns at all. f5, but okay, a3. Now that's just the end. King g7, just to make sure that since the queen is on the dark squares, it would be better to put the king on the dark squares also. Okay, e7, but okay, now that's just some desperate attempts. Queen c5, trading off the queens, queen a6. 95, just making sure that nothing is hanging, and I will just push my pawns forward, and that's it. Queen e6, h5, h4, and the final blow, a2. So I'm just threatening a1 queen, and if you take it, there is check, mate, easy peasy. And if you go on h3, I do think that I have, wait, what do I have again? Is it possible that I have queen g1? Yes, I do. And now that's basically the end. I will run with my king towards there, and yeah, actually that's it. There is no check. There is one check, queen a7, but I take it. And if you go queen a1 again, I take it. And if you go queen there, I just have to. Actually, wait, that's a good question. Where do I put my king? I have to find a square on which there is no more checks. Yeah, b6. g6, sorry. Now there is no more queen b6. I can just take it. Yeah. So, how should I say it? If you want to win at chess, even against higher rated opponents, you just have to improve your position slowly but surely. Magnus Carlsen didn't try to improve his position, he just wanted to win extremely fast, and that's not good. Thank you very much for looking at this small analysis. If you have any more questions, or if you want me to analyze any games, just go in the comment section. That would be, always a good idea. See you in the future. Consider, of course, subscribing. See you in the future. Take care.